The reality we live in can be a very strange place. Most of the time, fact being stranger than fiction. How will we ever start to understand this reality we live in unless we question everything? Join me and a guest as we unravel the mysteries of this reality, one topic at a time. This is Inquiries of Our Reality with Shayn Jones.
What is up, Inquirers, and welcome to the expanse of deep open-minded conversation. I'm the one they call Shane, and today for you guys, we're going to be diving into the Sasquatch and Dogman phenomenon that's going on down there in Tennessee with another fellow researcher, the one, the only Harley Owens, somebody that I've been trying to have set up on the show for a while, and some stuff with life just happened to pop up, but we ended up having a great conversation, and we're definitely going to be coming back for a part two. And as we get into the part two, as you hear at the end of this conversation, we start getting into a little bit more of the conspiracies wrapped around this type of stuff, so I definitely think round two is going to be a lot of fun, so hopefully you guys are around for that one. But before we get into today's show, just a couple of quick updates. As I mentioned last week, the next live for Bizarre Inquiries on YouTube will be on March 6th. And of course, I will give more information for that as we get a little bit closer to it. But if anybody has any questions, clips, articles, anything like that they would like to throw for us to discuss on the show, make sure you guys get those to me before that next date that it goes live. And of course, if anybody wants to throw in their opinions, anything like that, through any of the things that we're talking about on the show, you guys are always more than welcome to hop in on the comments and everything on YouTube. But as that expands up, as I'm able to get more followers on TikTok, that will eventually be on TikTok Live also. But we'll just have to build it up to that point because you need so many followers to be able to go live from the streaming service I use, or from the studio service that I use. But and the next update, I know I've also mentioned on the last episode, but I recently did some new changes to the Open Minds Media merch store, one of which is that I got rid of the Etsy store, so I am just on Printify now. And with that, of course, I found a way to discount a lot of the merchandise, where all the shirts run about $16 now instead of $25, so a lot cheaper of a price point. Hopefully there's some stuff that you guys enjoy over there and you guys don't mind scooping some merchandise. And if you guys end up picking up any shirts for your hopefully one of your favorite podcasts, your favorite creatures, favorite topics, any of that kind of stuff, if you guys send me a picture of you guys wearing those shirts, I will definitely make sure that I post them on social media just to show how much I appreciate you guys. But the last little piece of news and updates is that, like I also mentioned on the last episode, I did shut down the Telegram for anybody that didn't catch it. I'm going to be putting some more focus into creating clips and some video content for you guys, so I was trying to make stuff a little bit easier, and maybe I will expand back to doing a Telegram or a Discord. So if anybody has any interest in that, shoot me a message, let me know, and maybe if I get enough people interested again, then I might bring that back. But as of right now, that will be shut down. But just one last thing before we get into the show: if anybody would like to be a guest on the show, or if anybody has an encounter or experience that they would like to share on the show, or possibly have me investigate, you guys can email me at inquiriesofourrealitypodcast@outlook.com, or you guys can call in or text the hotline, and that number is 313-364-1551. And extending that past that, if anybody would like to call into that number and give some shout outs that I can play in the beginning of the show, or if you guys want to say your opinions on the show, hopefully positive, then I can also use it for that. But don't hesitate to contact me, because I absolutely love hearing from you guys. And every single thing that I mention and will mention throughout the show is all available on the link tree, which is of course available down in the show description. And with that, let's get into the show. Please welcome to the show, Sasquatch researcher and investigator, and after a long time, an absolute pleasure to have on the show. Please welcome to the show, Harley Owens. How's it going today, man?
Oh man, I'm just so glad we could finally make this happen. I'm still a little under the weather, but I'm glad we're going to make this happen tonight, and look forward to discussing everything here in East Tennessee, and quite frankly, I mean across the country with this phenomenon. But I'm just super blessed, and I'm very thankful to be on the right side of the dirt.
Dude, man, after it's been almost like I think 6 months or so that we've been trying to do this show, and it's just been something popping up, and then we almost weren't able to do it today because we're having some type of weird technical issue, and we're like, all right, third try's the charm, let's attempt this.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, I told you, I was like, third time's a charm, and sure enough, it popped up and worked. So, I was kind of getting worried we'd have to push it back again, but here we are. We're going to make it happen. So I'm excited for it.
And I know you talk about a lot of info that, usually kind of gets pulled and stuff like that. So, hopefully we'll get into some of that today, and we won't have some more technical issues as we're getting into that today.
Right. Yeah. That's the biggest thing. Ultimately, I don't want to get too deep into anything, but that's ultimately the route that I'm going to take. So,
and man, I'm happy to go that way. But I guess before we get too far into the meat and potatoes of the conversation, for anybody that may not be familiar with who you are, what you do, why don't you give them a little bit about your background and a little bit about how you got into what you do?
Oh yeah, so I'm 24. I'll be 25 in March. I'm married to my lovely wife Gabrielle, and we have two beautiful girls, Ivy and Iris. I was a paralineman, and then I got hurt. So I still kind of do that on and off. But
when you say you got hurt as a power lineman, did you get like electrocuted or something? Holy shit!
No. I got my hand crushed. It was it wasn't severely burned or nothing. So I just got my hand crushed. But ultimately, before Bigfoot or anything like that, I didn't believe in it. Growing up, I heard the stories, and I was like, oh, well, the boogers are out there. They'll get you. But, I always believed in the Black Panthers, because I heard one scream when I was little, and I was like, you know what, that traumatized me. So I know they're out there, much less having a sixth grade history teacher that told us, about his encounter with the Black Panther while in a car with his girlfriend. So that was, Bigfoot was the last thing on my mind. So growing up, graduating high school, and, I didn't want to be what my dad was, because my dad was a lineman. Growing up, my dad was a lineman, and, he wanted me to follow in his footsteps. And, right out of high school, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to be different from what my dad done. So I worked for my parents' neighbors. They had an auction company named Tri-State Auction and Realty. And we traveled literally everywhere, Virginia, Pennsylvania, Kentucky, Ohio, Michigan, Mississippi, Alabama, pretty much everywhere on the East Coast. And so it was in 2020, we went to Virginia, Southwest Virginia. It's like right on the Kentucky line, place called Pound. There was a sawmill there, and we were up there. I was up there for 2 weeks, and the week prior, it was me and another boy, and we worked getting this auction ready. And we were up there talking to the owner of this place, and he was telling us about this bear that was coming into the sawmill and rummaging around through it. And I was like, "Is he a pretty good sized bear?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "But there's far worse things in the mountains than him." And I just kind of stuck with me. I was like, "What in the world is this old timer talking about? What's worse than a black bear?" And I was like, well, running through my mind first was the Black Panther, and then I was like, well, then you got all the venomous snakes and all that stuff, which I grew up hunting and fishing. I knew what was normal in the outdoors. And so I'm just standing there, and I'm like, okay, so he's warning us about this bear, so we really need to keep our eye out. So, going on the rest of that week, nothing really happened. And the auction came up on a Saturday, and the boss came up and talked to me. He asked me if I want to stay up there another week to help people load their equipment that they bought. And I was like, yeah, I'll do it. And so the rest of the guys, he sent on to somewhere else. I think it was Arkansas or somewhere. I can't remember right off the top of my head, but I know he sent the rest of the crew to another location. And I stayed up there. So Sunday came around, and I was standing out there, and, I'm like, I'm not going to sit in this hotel all day. I'm like, it was raining. I was like, I can go out here and get some stuff done. I can organize stuff, put it on pallets, see who bought what, and just organize it for whenever they come pick it up. So I'm sitting out there on the skid steer, putting stuff on the pallets and hooking it on the skid steer and picking it up and moving wherever I want to put it, just kind of organizing it and keeping it where I need it to be. And I get done. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to go walk over here and look around at this edge of the wood line here. So I'm walking around the edge of the wood line, and I find a couple of tracks, and there was 2 or 3 of them that I could tell out pretty good the rest from the other ones. And I was like, those are a Bigfoot. And I jokingly told myself, well, this is Bigfoot, or somebody's out here playing a prank on me. This is a homeless person or something. But I wear a size 12, and I put my foot next to it, and I was like, that's an awful Bigfoot. And I just kept telling myself, this is like a homeless person or something.
Giant-footed homeless person. Like they smashed their foot and it swelled or something. Like
right, exactly right. Yeah, I was like, I kept telling myself, this is a homeless person.
Got some Shaquille O'Neal homeless people running around out here in the woods.
yeah, exactly right. The mountain fed boys. Yeah, exactly. So going on Monday, nothing happened. Tuesday, nothing happened. Wednesday, September 23rd, 2020, that was literally the day that changed my life forever. So I got out the hotel that morning. I went to the location where a sawmill was. I was running a little late, and there was already somebody at the gate waiting on me. And I was like, well, crap, I'm going to hear it from the boss. And so I unlocked the top gate, and we drove down into this holler, and there was another gate that I had to unlock. And there was a little gravel road that went down to the side that led to an old train car that sat down that way. But that I unlocked that second gate, and we went into the sawmill area. And he had like 3 pallets, and I hopped on skid steer, loaded them up, and sent him on his way. I didn't have anybody in there for the rest of that day. And going into that place every other morning while being there was deer, there was wildlife in that place. But this morning, there was nothing. And so I'm just like, well, that's good. I mean, that was one of the weirdest things that popped up to me at first. I was like, well, why is there no deer? Because there was always deer or turkey in there in the mornings. And, I was sitting there. I just kept sitting there all day long. I was sitting in a skid steer. And about lunchtime came around, like 1:30, 1:40, something like that, because I was playing Angry Birds on my phone. And, I get up to go to the sandwich to get a Coca-Cola and a peanut butter sandwich out of my cooler. And as I go to open my cooler lid, I hear a growlish grunt. And I'm like, oh, gosh, this is that bear. So I look over to the left, which is the wood line, and then there's like a big old cliff face that's up above where the wood line. There's like a wood line here, and then there's a cliff face up above. And I'm sitting there looking from this sawmill, and I'm like, well, where's this bear at? He's got to be somewhere right here. I just heard him growl. And I didn't pay no. I was like, all right, you know what, whatever. I'm just going to get my sandwich and a drink out of here. And I heard it again. I was like, okay, this is weird. Well, I seen something black moving along this cliff face. And I was like, well, this is that bear. And I pulled my sandwich out and my drink, and I'm sitting there, and I look down, I look back up, and I look down, I look back up. And I did for the third time. I'm sitting there, and I see it. It leans out, looks at me, and it leans back, and it hides itself. And I'm like, oh, my gosh. I knew instantly what the thing was when I seen it. I was like, oh, my gosh, this is a Bigfoot. These things are real. People aren't crazy. And I was like, if I don't take a picture of this, nobody's going to believe me. I don't have time to take a video of this thing. I'm just going to take a picture. Well, I took a photograph of it, and all the weirdest thing happened after I took that picture. I had it was a brand new iPhone 8 Plus I had at the time. Actually, I have the phone sitting right here. This was the phone I had at the time. It was brand new, and I took the photograph of it, and I was like, oh my gosh. And the phone just mysteriously drained of everything. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is, I'm not going to have this picture of this thing. I was like, it's done for. Nobody's ever going to believe me. And, I'm having a stare down with this thing, and it's up on this cliff. I'm like, if this thing wants to, it can come down here and get me, and it's still leaning in and out, trying to look at me and doing all this other stuff. But it eventually just turns around and goes further up the mountain. I can hear it walking away. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. And I went and jumped in the truck, plugged up the phone, hoping and praying it was going to come back on. And about 10, 15 minutes after the creature was gone, it came back on. And I was like, oh my gosh, this picture better be here. So I was typing in my password and doing all this other stuff. And I scrolled and scrolled and scrolled and scrolled. And sure enough, the picture was right there up on this cliff face. This large black silhouette peeking out from around the trees. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. I was like, you know what? I've got it. This is my money shot. I've got proof of Bigfoot right here in Virginia. And so that going on the rest of that day, nothing happened. I left normally around dark. And as I was getting ready to leave, it's starting to get dusky dark, and I'm sitting there doing the paperwork, and they started hollering. No more than just one. Which initially I thought it was just one, but after having a spectral analysis done of the vocalizations, it is confirmed that there was more than one creature. And they were hollering from one side of this valley, the direction where I seen the creature. Like they were everywhere. And I decided to get out of there. I was like, I'm leaving.
What kind
So
of
I came
howling
back.
were they doing, if you don't mind me asking? Like, was it like the Ohio howl, where it's kind of like the siren, or were they just kind of whooping howling? Like, what type of howling were they doing?
Oh man, like they were. It's almost like the Ohio howls, but then it's almost like the Sierra sounds. Kind of they were. It's insane. Like I have the audio and I'll have it sent to you. But dude, they were doing some crazy howls and stuff like that, man. Like,
Did it
and
seem
I had
irritated, like they were agitated, like trying to get you out of there? Or did it seem like they were just trying to communicate with each other?
It seems like there was some kind of communication. There's a lot of people that think that they're mourning. Like they just the way that they sound, it's like they were sounding sad. And I was like, well, I don't know if they really sounded sad or not. I was like, I think they were pissed off at me being in there, but I don't know ultimately. I mean, no, but I don't really know. All I know is that there was definitely more than one of them.
Hold on tight, everyone. Inquiries of Our Reality will be right back after this brief commercial break. But if you don't mind taking a second to follow Inquiries of Our Reality on Instagram and Facebook, and Open Minds Media on YouTube and TikTok, I'd greatly appreciate it. And feel free to spark up a conversation. I love getting to know you guys. And now back to the show.
So I came back on a Thursday, which was the 24th, and I got out there right at sunrise, and I'm out there, and about lunchtime came around, and I started walking around, seeing if I could find some more footprints, and sure enough, I did. And I got photos and videos of these tracks, and from where our creature was up on the ridge, it came down into the sawmill area where it was in the flat, and like I'm 6'6", and from stride to stride that this thing had, I couldn't even do it. Like these tracks are probably 16, 17 inches long. I mean, I have a foot there for scale. I wear size 12, and like these tracks were just impressive. And I mean, for it to do a stride like it done, and me, I'm all legs, and like I couldn't even do that. And so I this is all happening. Like I was still trying to process that I seen this thing the day before, and now I'm finding more footprints, and and little did I know what was going to happen that night was going to shock me even more. So going on later on today evening, I was doing the same thing I was doing the night before, and I was filling out the paperwork right about dusky dark. They started hollering again. Well, they sounded like they were further off. And then about 15 minutes after those, they started hollering again, and they sounded like they were even further away. So that was the weirdest thing. Like they were I don't know if they were like traveling or what, but that was the weirdest thing. And the sounds, I mean, the sounds, I've never heard anything like this in my entire life. I know what elk sound like. I know what coon dogs sound like. I know what coyotes sound like. I know what everything sounds like. And it was unlike anything I've ever heard. So Friday rolls around and I'm getting out of this place, y'all. I've had enough. I'm ready to get home, and I'm trying to find answers too. So I go to this little drive-in diner called Robo's. It's in Pound, Virginia. It's got really good food. I'm hoping I can go back there one day and go back to this place where I originally had this encounter. So I pulled in and I get out and I order me about to eat, and I see these old timers sitting at the table. I was like, you know what? If anybody has answers, it's going to be these old boys. So I got my bite to eat. I went over and sat down and I struck up conversation. You know, we were sitting there cutting up and just having conversation, and I dropped the bomb on them. I was like, y'all boys ever seen anything that's not quite natural? They all got quiet, and one of them looked at me and he said, well, what did you see? I said this, and I showed him picture. I showed him the phone and videos. And then I let them listen to the audio recording. And they all got quiet and they all looked at each other. And that one said, well, those are the devil monkeys. And I was like, devil monkeys? I was like, so those are Bigfoot? And he's like, yeah, devil monkeys, wood buggers, Bigfoot, Sasquatch, mountain giants. He said, it's all the same thing. I was like, well, all right. As long as y'all are being honest with me and not making me seem like a fool, then that's all right. I believe that, you know, because I definitely seen and heard these things. And they're like, we believe you. So, you know, I came home after that, started telling everybody about it, started telling my friends, started telling the parents, started telling everybody, sharing the photos, sharing all that stuff, to just face the most absolute ridicule I ever faced in my life. And, you know, I'm still going strong. This year will be 5 years of not talking to my family.
Over the Sasquatch stuff?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man, dude, that's rough. Like, I've heard the extent of, like, when people start getting into, like, conspiracy stuff and they kind of start breaking away from their family. But, like, the Sasquatch stuff seems like usually something the family kind of just we'll kind of leave it alone, man. Like, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, it's difficult. But and I lost a lot of friends after that. And I stopped hunting and fishing. That was the biggest thing. I grew up hunting and fishing, and it was a very rough 3 years not hunting and fishing, because December Thanksgiving of 2023 was when I started back deer hunting. That was a very emotional day for me to get back out in the woods and overcome what I thought was a fear of the Bigfoot. And I didn't expect to really be doing this research and doing this stuff, but I have such a huge drive and a passion to do this, and I can't help but feel like this is my calling in life. My wife supports me, and I'm just very, very fortunate and blessed. I'm very young in this field, and I've had some pretty remarkable encounters and experiences since my first one in Virginia. But right here in East Tennessee in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, there's more than just Bigfoot.
So, like, when you first started off, you had this experience. You literally went like a couple years without having an interest in researching Sasquatch, even like remotely, even going out in the woods.
Yeah, I didn't have any interest whatsoever. No, I didn't want to be in the woods. Like every time, like working in or around the woods, my head was on a swivel. I didn't want anything to do with it. I wouldn't stay out after dark. It traumatized me, man. And after I went hunting Thanksgiving of 2023, I was like, you know what? I can do this. I can go out and look for these things. And, I didn't know what I was doing. So I looked up Bigfoot research in East Tennessee, and lo and behold, Scott Carpenter's name had pulled up, but unfortunately he had passed away. And I was like, well, kind of bummed out about it. And, I was kind of wishing I'd started this sooner. And me and his friend Travis, me and his son Travis have since become good friends. And, his dad was one of the best in this to do it. And, I'm not going to claim to be as good as Scott Carpenter. And, he's a huge inspiration for what I do. And, I'm kind of picking up the torch that he kind of left off to me, I guess you could say. And, it's a honor and a privilege to be associated with Scott Carpenter and pick up where his research had left off. But, I've come to learn that if you're not careful out in the woods, it's very, very easy to get lost. It's very easy to not be safe out there.
So that's always like the number one thing I always tell people with squatching is that, you may end up finding a spot that's interesting. You go off on that spot, but you got to keep in mind that the same protocols would go if you were hiking out in the woods. That how many people get lost hiking out in the woods, let alone when you're following a Sasquatch out in the woods. Like we heard about the thing, I think it was on New Year's, not New Year's, maybe it was Thanksgiving.
Christmas, it was Christmas, wasn't it?
That's what it was. Yeah, Christmas, where the two Sasquatch researchers got stuck somewhere out there and they were found. That's an awful thing to hear about in the community, but just in general, man, I can't tell people enough to make sure you're safe when you do this stuff and make sure that you know at least some basic survival tactics in case you do get stuck somewhere. So at least you can maintain yourself for a bit until hopefully somebody can find you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And just recently, since last Tuesday, if I'm not mistaken, there was a 75-year-old woman that was missing hiking here in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, and they just found her today, about half a mile off of the main trail. They don't know if it was natural causes or anything like that, but they just recently found her. And safety is a big thing. You can't take this stuff for granted. These are beings, creatures, entities, whatever you want to call them. You have to respect them in their home. Now, I'm not saying Bigfoot or whatever killed this 75-year-old woman. I don't know that, but I'm just saying, all these other instances of the missing 411 or whatever, portals, interdimensional beings or whatever you want to call it, you got to be careful out there, and I don't go armed. I don't. I will flat out say it right now. I do that out of respect for the Bigfoot. Because that's just my thing. I don't have any desire to shoot one of these things. I'm just strictly out there to observe.
Say, at least like something you got to do, at least just for the sake of like other predators and stuff. Like if you ain't going out there armed or anything, like at least bring some like bear mace or something like that for yourself, but not for the Sasquatch,
Oh,
just
yeah,
in
yeah.
case like something else comes across your path. Cause especially in like Tennessee and stuff, like certain states you're fine, but if you're in like Tennessee, you don't know if you might end up coming across like a cougar or something, or, you know, some
Well,
type of like
yeah,
bear or something. You got to have something that at least makes some noise or something you can at least like
well, black bear is not too bad. You just have to make yourself look bigger than they are and
That's
make a
true.
lot of noise. It's not bad to scare off a black bear. But you know, the mountain lions, TWA says they're not here, but they are. I mean, the footprints are here. I mean, even the Black Panthers, I mean, they're here too. I mean, but people will say, oh, well, they're not real. Okay, yeah, look at all the pictures all over the internet, you know, these large black cats, you know, and it's crazy, man. They want to hide stuff, but it is what it is ultimately. And, you know, I used to think that Bigfoot was ape. I really did. You know, after that first experience, I thought it was ape. But after that second experience of mine, and the second one I seen was eerily similar to how this one looks. Just the nose was protruded out a little bit more. And that when I seen the second one, that's when I realized there was something more to these things than being just ape. So December 7th, 2023 was when I started my field research. So I've literally just in this over a year and a month. Well, this month will be a year and 2 months. So I'm fairly new to this. And so I started my research December 7th, 2023. December 14th, 2023 was when I had my second encounter. So I'm out there hiking around. I had my wife with me, and we're hiking up trail. And as we're on our way back out, she pats me on the shoulder. She says, "Hey, look at that over there." And I was like, "What?" She said, "Those trees, they look like something out of a movie." And I'm like, "Okay." Because the way those sticks were broken, they looked like spikes that were sticking up out of the ground. I was like, "Well, this is weird." And as I get over closer and I'm looking around, there's these two trees that had been placed there. And it looked like something had been laying in between those two trees. And I'm like, well, what the heck is going on right here? And I'm like, there's something's like you could see from where the leaves were laid, like pushed down into the ground, like something was laying there. I was like, well, I'm going to step this off just for shits and giggles and see how big this thing is. Well, I stepped it off. It was about 8.5 feet. And I was like, this ain't no black bear. I was like, if that's a black bear, that's a world record. And so I heard something moving over behind me. And I'm like, I hollered at my wife. I said, stay right there. I was like, if something comes, I said, just run. And she just stayed there on the main trail. But this day in particular, I did have a firearm. But it was after this encounter that I stopped to carry a firearm. So I'm hiking back in that direction where I hear the noise. And I come across this game trail. And these trees are broken off high. So it's a trailway that the Sasquatch are using. I'm talking these branches are like 8, 9 feet, 10 feet tall off the ground that's broken. And I'm like, I'm just mesmerized by this, you know, because any hunter would envy this. Like you could just walk all up through there. I mean, you could probably drive a truck through there. And I'm sitting there. And I just have this feeling I need to look to my right. It's like a gut feeling, like, hey, look to your right. And I'm like, okay. And I'm just like sitting there. So I stop. And I turned and I see it. This reddish brown Bigfoot. He walks right in behind the tree. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this one's a lot closer than my first one. My first one was probably about 50, 60 yards away. This one was within 25 and 30 yards. And he's behind this tree because I seen him walk right behind it. Well, the next thing I know, it steps out from behind the tree and it turns to look straight at me. And it crouches down in behind this laurel bush. Well, the laurel bushes, we have them everywhere here, and they stay green year round. They don't lose their leaves. And he squats down behind this laurel bush, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this thing, what's this thing going to do? And he peeks his head out of the laurel bush to look at me. I could see him real good. He looks almost identical to what this one looks like. Just his nose just sticks out a little bit more. And he had black eyes, just jet black eyes. I mean, gray skin, no hair around the mouth or nothing, no hair on the face, just gray skin, black eyes, and nose a little bit more bigger. And he was sitting there staring at me. And when I was looking into this thing's eyes, there was a humanness to it. And I was like, this is crazy. Like this is like looking at another person. And, you know, I had my hand close to my pistol. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Well, all of a sudden, to my left, there was a loud pop and a smack of a branch breaking. And then behind me was sounding like stomping in place. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm being surrounded, because I had one in front of me that I was looking at. And I had another one to my left. And then I had one behind me. And I was like, I'm hauling high end back to my wife. I said, we got to go now, we got to go. And, you know, it's looking back on that experience now, I'm like, they were either toying with me to see what I would do, or they were just trying to get me out of there. But, you know, I just thought it was funny, you know, as I was hiking in there, you know, it was on my right hand. The first one was on my right hand side, the one that I seen. And, you know, I had the feeling that I needed to turn and look at him, you know, and so I did, you know, and then my pistol was facing the direction of the main trail. And then I had the Bigfoot in front of me that I was having I seen. Then I had one to my left and I had one behind me. And that was a wake up call. That was when I realized there was something more to these things, and they're a lot smarter than what people make them out to be.
Hold that thought. We'll be back in a flash. But if you don't like hearing the ads, then I have a solution for you. You can get ad-free and early access to this show and Bizarre Encounters with Shayn Orin on the Open Minds Media Patreon for just $1 a month. That's less than a bag of chips, and it's a great way to support the show and all the hard work behind it. And if you're interested in merch store discounts, live access to episodes, or premium video versions of episodes, then there are a few other tiers with additional benefits with 7-day free trials available. And we are back, so let's hop right in. Dude, I mean, even from that, I mean, I'm fully convinced that if these things wanted to actually like hurt and kill somebody, that they'd have no problem doing it. I mean, just seeing how precise these things can throw rocks, like, and how big of a distance they can throw them from, how big of boulders they can throw these things from. It's one of those things that if you're out there and they're near you, if they wanted to hurt you, they would have no problem doing it. Like, they have something else going on. It's either curiosity, or they're trying to see what you'll do, or they're, again, trying to entertain themselves possibly by interacting with you from a distance, again, just to see what you'll do out of curiosity. But, like, yeah, I'm convinced, though, that if these things really wanted to hurt somebody, like, you wouldn't even know it was coming, and you'd already be on the ground with a rock.
No, I'm telling you, man, they are fast. Like, it is unfathomable how fast they are, you know, and it's quiet. For something so big, they can be so quiet when they want to be. And, you know, going on to this, my third encounter that happened January 7th of 2024. I have two of my good friends out with me, Robert Effler and George Lunsford. They're a part of a research team that I'm a part of, North Carolina Investigates. So I invited them up to my research area. They came up and we went out and hit the trail. Aside from finding footprints and stuff that day, it was snowing on us and sleeting, and the weather was changing rapidly. So we're hiking back down the trail, and I nudged George on the shoulder, and I said, let's go down into this holler right here, and we'll work our way down, and we'll meet up with Robert back down this way. He said, okay. So Robert's going along down the trail with his wife, Michelle, and we're keeping radio contact. And I'm in front of George, and we're working our way through this thicket. And we come around the corner, and there's a little valley that comes down, and there's a hillside right here and a hillside right here. So we're coming around, and I've catch a glimpse of something moving out of my peripheral vision. And I'm just like, okay, that whatever that is moving. Well, I seen it move even more, and I was like, well, that's not a bear. That thing's standing up on 2 feet, and it's walking through the laurels. And I stopped dead in my tracks. I said, George, there he is. He said, Harley, that's a shadow. I said, George, that's a Bigfoot. I said, he's behind that tree. I said, he's about to peek out. And sure enough, he peeked out, and he was looking at it. And he said, Harley, that's a shadow. I said, George, it's a Bigfoot. I said, stand right here. Shane, I didn't take 3, 4 steps, something like that. 10, 15 feet. I don't know how far I stepped, but I took big steps. And I stepped on this branch, and it sounded like a shotgun going off. This Bigfoot reaches up, braces himself on the tree, and he leans down to look for me because he couldn't see me. Next thing I know, I heard my buddy George say, oh, shit. And the next thing I know, George is running past me. The Bigfoot done took off, and I'm just standing here at a loss of words. I'm like, well, I guess we're chasing this damn thing. So we get up there. We get up there to where it was standing at the tree, and we could see 3 perfect toes in the moss, and you could see a slight big toe and a slight pinky toe, and then you could like see the impression of where he stepped at. And we figured he was 8.5 foot tall, because there was a branch that was broken. His head was right at it. But we ended up naming this Bigfoot Alfalfa because where it was sleeting and raining on us, his hair was sticking up like alfalfa off of Little Rascals. We named him Alfalfa. I mean, 8 foot tall, a little over 4 foot shoulders. He's a big one. So that was pretty cool to make somebody's first experience happen in that area, and it was just so real. It was a very special moment, very special day, and it's the memories, man. The memories will last a lifetime.
I mean, that's half the battle, man. It's like when you go out there, not only are you trying to search for a Squatch, but you end up also making these like really, really tight bonds with people that share these experiences with you, because when you have those other people, it's like then the experience becomes undeniable. But if you're by yourself, then you end up questioning yourself. Did I really see that? Was that actually something? So I mean, you can do stuff with the GoPro, but if it starts getting too dark, you're not looking in the right angle, you can only do so much with it. Right. But if you got somebody else out there with you, that's how you get that like solid, good evidence. And also you get a little bit more comfortable because you don't feel like you're the only one out there. Like in this example, I mean, I'm sure if he was out there by himself, instead of running towards this thing, he probably would have been running away from this thing. And
I doubt it. He probably would have still chased it.
I mean, that's probably a good means to have, though, because when it comes to like other animals, like the number one thing is you don't want to run away from them, because as soon as they see your back, that's when their instinct to chase starts happening. So I don't know like where Sasquatch would fall with this, but I mean, if something starts bluff charging directly at this thing, most people, I mean, even humans, man, like an opossum starts running towards you, your first instinct is you start running back because you're expecting this thing's going to run the other direction. So
it's primordial fear. Yeah, it's primordial fear.
So if you can't get big, at least start trying to put your arms up and chase towards it. I mean,
exactly right. Yeah. Well, I mean, the worst thing that happen, it bites you. So
you just can't corner it. Yeah. You just got to make sure it has a distance to run off into.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. So a few weeks after that experience happened, I had my first experience with a dog man. It was in a completely different area. It was a new area that I wanted to start researching. And after that encounter with the dog man, I only went back once, and that was only to get a size comparison and, just explain everything with that.
Were you into the Dogman phenomenon before this experience? Just out of curiosity.
Oh no. Dogman was the last thing on my mind. Like I didn't believe in Dogman. This is another thing that my friends had told me about, like from George and Robert. They're like, well, the Dogman are out there, you better be careful. I'm like, I don't know about a 8 foot tall Dogman or anything like that. So
I still think a lot of people that have had Dogman experiences in the past, they were labeling them as Sasquatch because they didn't have like a means of comparison, where it seems like I don't think that the Dogman phenomenon is like taking off right now. I think it's just a means that we know what we're looking at now, so we can categorize it, where if you start looking into the past and you start looking into particulars of a lot of encounters, I think you'll start finding a lot of Dogman stuff. It's just a matter of
like
now we know what we're dealing with.
Yeah, the baboon-headed Bigfoots. Yeah, I think those are dog.
And they're always really aggressive too. They're known for being aggressive, like perfect trope for like a dog man,
Yeah, they're real assholes. I can tell you from experience, they're real assholes. So December 29th, 2024. I just recently had my 1 year anniversary of seeing my first dog man just a few days ago. So
1 year with dog man.
Yeah, 1 year. Yeah, 1 year. So I'm going out by myself, and I decided to go to a new area that I had been scoping out for a while, and I was just going to go check it out. And so I changed my mind, and I decided I was going to go to my normal area. Well, on the drive there, I changed my mind again, and I was like, well, I'm going to this new place. Well, there's a campground there, and there's a bunch of trails that lead up to the top of the mountain where you can go over the mountain. It takes you to the Appalachian Trail, or you can just go straight across over into North Carolina. So I'm hiking along the trail. The first trail, anyway. I hiked 2 different trails that day. So the first trail I'm hiking along, and the first thing I find is this huge ash tree made out of broken trees. These trees are broken about a foot off the ground, and the trees are probably 6-7 inches around, and they were all broken, and they were placed into a huge ash tree. And I'm like, well, okay, this is Bigfoot sign. So I'm hiking around more in that area, and I'm finding these rock stacks in 3. And that was there's a correlation that the Sasquatch like to do with threes. What that is, I have no idea. They just like associate with threes. So I'm still hiking around more in that area, and I'm like, you know what, this area is not. I'm not really feeling it in here. I'm finding some things. So I head back to the truck. I head further up the mountain. So I get out up to this second trail. I get out. I get my backpack on. But I remember distinctly before I got out of the truck that I prayed. And I don't know why I did. I never did pray before I went to the woods, but that time I did. And so I'm heading the trail. I'm walking up the mountain. And, it was a pretty good hike, probably about 20, 30 minutes. And I'm hiking along across the first crate, across the second crate. I'm zigzagging around, and I come down this hill. And there was a little culvert there, and there was a creek that had washed it out. So you just had to walk across the culvert and go up this hill. So I'm walking up the hill, and the trail winds off. The trail to the right wasn't very well maintained by the park services. Trail to the left went up the mountain towards a waterfall. I'm like, okay, I guess I'm going towards this waterfall. So I go left up towards the trail that goes through the waterfall, and I'm walking along, and I notice this game trail that cuts right across the main path, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to look at this. So I take a right, and I'm looking around this game trail, and, I can still see the main path. And I'm sitting there at the main, and I'm looking, and I see these twist breaks. Well, twist breaks are what Sasquatch do. It's kind of a significant deal breaker to, that there exist. Because these trees were just twisted. Something with hands had to twisted these trees. So there was one that was twisted and broke probably about 8.5, 9 foot off the ground. I could reach probably 8 foot, and it was way above where I could reach. And
these are the ones that are just like the tips of the trees that are almost supposed to be like a place marker where like a path is.
Yes.
Where it's only maybe like a foot that they'll break off the tip of a branch and bend it down.
Well, it was twisted and broke. Yes. And it was bended down at the top. Yeah.
But it's like one of those things the average person wouldn't catch. But if you know what you're looking for, then you'll notice that there's like a cutout where something could go into that area, and it's just little place markers.
Exactly right. Yes. And the other one, I don't know how tall it was, but man, it was like 12, 13. I don't know how tall it was, but it was twisted and broke. But the kicker was, I was trying to rule it out. I was like, you know what, this could be wind. And as I'm sitting there looking around at all these other trees, I'm like, there's no way this is wind, because there was no other trees that were broke. It was just those two. One was twisted and broke and facing up the mountain. One was twisted and broke facing down the mountain. So where it was twisted and broke, they had one end facing down. And then the other one where it was twisted and broke, they had it facing up the mountain. I'm like, man, this is too good to be true. I'm like right in Bigfoot's backyard right now. And I'm like, this is further up the mountain. I'm like, they're going to be here. Like they're just going to be here. I kept telling myself, it's going to be Bigfoot. It's going to be Bigfoot. It's going to be Bigfoot. And I decided to head back over towards the main path. And I'm still finding some smaller stick structures that I believe the juveniles had made because they were smaller. They looked like the big structures, but they were a lot smaller. So I'm walking along, and I get back on the main path. And I'm coming up the hill more, and I checked my phone. And I had I think it was 27% battery or 30 or something. And I remember sending my satellite location to my wife, because normally I would tell her where I was going out hiking, and it was always the original place. But I didn't tell her I was going to this new place. So I tried sending my location to her over satellite. I'm sitting there trying to find the satellite with my phone, and it said it had sent. So I'm walking further up this trail, and I remember distinctly coming up, there was a curve, a real sharp curve, and then it would go out, and then it made another curve. And I'm coming up to this first curve, and it said 20% battery. And I'm like, well, that's weird. And, I wasn't filming or nothing that day. I don't know why my phone drained like it did. I guess it was probably from the electromagnetic field or whatever. So I'm walking, and I come around that curve, and I checked my phone again, and it said 10% battery, and it shut off. And I'm like, well, this is deja vu all over again from my Bigfoot experience. I'm like, I'm going to run into another Bigfoot right here. And so I'm standing there, and I'm like, I have a decision to make. By this point in time, it's starting to snow. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's getting cold. And I just had a hoodie on. I just had blue jeans on. I had my muck boots on. I didn't even have a toboggan. I just had a ball cap on. And I'm like, I got a decision to make. I either got to go or I can keep going up a little bit further. And it was probably about 5:30 around that time. And I'm like, okay, I changed my mind. I'm just going to go home. So I'm on my way back down the mountain. I come around that curve. And as I come around that curve, it probably wasn't 15, 20 yards after coming around the curve, I heard something behind me to my right moving. Just in that direction from where I was just at. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to stop right here. I'm going to turn and this thing's going to be there and it's just going to be there. And I told myself, I remember telling myself this in my head. I was like, it's going to be a Bigfoot. So I turned around and boy, was I wrong. I turned around and laying there flat on the ground was this giant brown wolf with the brightest yellow eyes. This thing pushes itself up with its forearms and it's in a bipedal position and it takes 3 steps to this tree and it props its arm up on the tree and it's growling and snarling at me. His bright yellow, like self-illuminating eyes. Like, you ever seen a raccoon's hands up close?
Yeah.
Dude, that's how their hands look. Like, it's something out of a movie. Like, it's crazy.
I actually had Daniel Thelker. He's a coon hunter from South Carolina. I had him on the show a long time ago, and he was throwing in this theory about, he was saying how much of, because he had a dogman experience, he was talking about how much of it relates to raccoons, that he was mentioning the hands look just like raccoon hands. He was saying some of the facial features look just like raccoon hands. So it's a weird theory, but you're not the very first person to mention that.
Oh man, like I'm telling you, that's just the hands, man. They're just so raccoon looking, and that, much less the claws coming off of them were terrifying.
Straight from a coon hunter was saying the same exact thing. He was saying the hands look exactly like raccoon hands.
It is. It's very, very eerie and ominous. But the tail, this one had a tail. It was almost like a fox's tail. You know how a fox's tail is big and poofy. This thing had a big poofy tail like a fox's. But the strangest, this thing, it had ears like a German Shepherd. But the weirdest part about this thing, it had forward facing legs like a human, not backwards facing legs like most dogmen that you hear about. And this is the rabbit hole that I went down, that this is some kind of government hybrid that's been cooked up and turned loose into the national park.
Don't go anywhere, guys. We'll be right back with that deep conversation you crave. But just a quick reminder, if you'd like to snag some gear for this show, Bizarre Encounters, or your favorite creature or topic, hop on over to the Open Minds Media merch store for a wide range of designs with new drops regularly. Welcome back to the show. Now let's dive right in. Dude, I'm glad that you brought that up too, because that's something else I've been saying for a long time on this show, is that I think there's 2 sides to the phenomenon when it comes to dogmen. There's these natural dogmen, and then there's also these government project dogmen, and that's usually what I relate people talking about the metal sound that they'll hear before having a dogman encounter.
Yes.
Is I think that it's either 1, underground bases, or 2, something that they're keeping these things in where they just let them out to hunt or to test to see what they're capable of doing. But yes, I'm on the same boat.
I think it's a portal opening, because you have a lot of instances of where you have these metallic sounds of portals opening. That's what another theory is.
That could be a two-sided thing too. Maybe it's like they get described the same, but maybe there's like a slight difference in the sounds, like a pitch or a frequency, and maybe it is a mixture of the two, where maybe there is some doors opening, and then also it could be some potential portals opening.
Yeah, exactly right. And that's just where the questions just keep on coming in. So I'm sitting here looking at this thing, and it's growling and snarling at me. And it's when you look into the eyes of a Bigfoot, there's a humanness to it. When you look into the eyes of a dog man, that thing is pure evil. It is not a good feeling when you look into their eyes. They are evil. And my life was flashing before my eyes. My wife was going to be a widow without me. My kids were going to grow up, get to college, get married. And, I wouldn't be a granddad or anything like that, and all of this would have been for nothing. It was very, very negative feelings and energies, like when I was looking into this thing's eyes. And, I'm just sitting there and I'm like, I got to go. So I start backpedaling, and I just took off. I backpedaled and I turned around and I ran. And this thing is chasing me. It's not on the main trail chasing me. It's staying in the woods and it's chasing me. And, I'm going down and I crossed the culvert creek and I kind of glanced over my shoulder and I could see the laurel bushes moving. It's crashing through the bushes. And I'm just like, I got to run. Let me tell you, I've never ran that fast in all my life until that day. And let me tell you, I was moving. I was moving, man. This 6'6" Slim Jim was moving. And I get to the next creek and I crossed it and I kind of glanced over my shoulder again. I could see the brush moving again as it was still chasing me. But after that, I'm almost positive it stopped chasing me at that bridge, but I'm not 100% for sure. I'm almost positive that was when it stopped. But all I know is I did not stop until I got to the truck. So after, it's literally just a couple of days after that, today, a year ago, my now really good friends, Rick and Steven, they're from Virginia. They came down and, we got a size estimate on this dog man. It was 8 foot tall, not including the ears. It was over 4 foot at the shoulder. It was like, I think it was 49 inches at the shoulder, something like that. Its head was 17 inches across. That's that's huge. And from where it was laying to the tree it was at when it had its arm propped up, was 28 feet and it took out in 3 steps.
Can you imagine the pure power of this thing? Like, look at like a normal dog's jaw and then compare that size of that head. That's like 1.5 human heads next to each other. And that's just a brutal, solid jaw all the way across.
Dude, I'm telling you, they're terrifying, man. They are the apex predator. Bigfoot, they might be, but dog man, I think ultimately you get 2 or 3 good sized dog man like what that one was, and one giant Bigfoot. I think the dog man could take it out easily.
I'm on the same boat with you on that
fast. One. They are fast, man. Like that, just the way that it all in one motion pushed itself to a bipedal position and took those 3 steps to that tree. It was unfathomably fast. So here's the kicker. So we had a compass with us, and where that dog man was laying, that compass was going haywire. So I don't know if there was a portal there that opened up or what. But it was very, very strange that the portal, that the compass was just going in circles in that area. There was something else. There was another thing that I found out just a few months ago. I was looking back on a map and I zoomed into that exact area where I had that experience with the dog man. And there's 2 cemeteries up there. They're very, very old. There's no gravestones up there or nothing for you to even know there's a cemetery up there. But where I had the experience with it, it was right smack dab in the middle of those 2 cemeteries.
Dude, that's the other weird part is these things are seemingly seen frequently around burial sites and cemeteries, specifically Native American burial sites, but even standard cemeteries.
Yeah, Bigfoot are too. Bigfoot's the same way. My main research area, there is a cemetery, and there's Bigfoot all around it.
See, that's the scary part, man, when dealing with Dogman, is because it's like you hear about these encounter stories where people put a couple shots into these things and they'll like drop. But then you hear other ones where they'll put a couple shots into them and it won't even affect them. So maybe that's kind of where the split, where like the government versus these supernatural type ones kind of comes into play. Because most of the stories that I've heard of people putting shots into these things, one main one I'm thinking of from like near the Manistee in Michigan, there was a trucker who was checking on his tires, started hearing something off in the woods.
Joe Barger, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think that was the one. Yeah, he put 2 shots into this thing from his driver's side window. It rolled into the ditch. And then, they started getting calls from the government saying, or from random like unmarked numbers saying like, you destroyed our property. And those ones, again, they seem like they'll drop. Those are the stories you hear about, is when people start having these weird interactions with like random numbers calling them saying you damaged our property. But then these spiritual ones, man, it's like people put shots into them and nothing will happen. These things will just keep coming. Yeah. And it seems to be that there's like your experience, this like area where they stop at, which is where it gets kind of weird. Are they tied to a specific area where they can't cross something? Like that's where it gets weird, man.
It's like the veil or something. It's like their limit or something, their territory range or something. It's just weird.
See, this is the hard part with Dogman, is that it's like you don't know which side to study because there's there seems to be multiple sides to this phenomenon. So it's like you could go out in the woods prepared for this one, but then end up encountering the other one where you can't put a shot into, or you can't cross a certain line.
I'm telling you right now, Bigfoot is my main objective. The dogmen just show up. My second encounter with one was a lot more terrifying, So that happened on April 28th of 2024. It was myself and my stepdaughter's dad. We went out turkey hunting at this wildlife management area, 20 minutes from downtown Knoxville, mind you. It's called Forks of the River. We went out there turkey hunting. We got out there right before the sun came up. And as the sun started coming up, we got out the vehicle and we started hiking along the trail. I've never been to this place turkey hunt before in all my life. So I was like, you know what? This is the first time turkey hunting since the spring before I had my Bigfoot encounter. So I was just ready to get out there and kill turkey. And so we're hiking along. We hit the owl call, and we hear these toms gobbling off in the distance. And we're hiking along, and, after the sun came up, they shut up. And I told him, I was like, listen, they're going to be out in these fields. They're going to be strutting. They're going to be where the hens are. So we got to get back into these fields. So we're pushing our way back into this place. We're going through the swamp, and we eventually found the big fields that's on the back of this wildlife management area along the river. And we set up in this field. We sit there, and we're just sitting there, and we kept calling, and, well, nothing happened. So I told him, I was like, you know what? Let's just go. He said, all right. So I remember distinctly, we walked along the back where these fields are, and there was a shelter right back there that had their tractors and all this other stuff that they had for this property. And we go into woods right behind that place. And it wasn't even 10, 15 yards after stepping into the woods, I hear bipedal footsteps start following us. Now, Hunter's in front of me, I'm behind him, and I'm just like, oh my gosh. I was like, I got to tell him. Because initially I thought it was a Bigfoot. I was like, I got to tell him there's something following us. I was like, he's going to think I'm crazy if I tell him. But he knows that I researched Bigfoot. But we're rolling along up through there. And all of a sudden, we come up to this point in the creek where there's a tree that's fallen over, and we have to pull ourselves up out of the creek bed to get on this trail. And, Hunter pulls himself up, and then I have to pull myself up. Hunter's like 6'2". And I'm 6'6", so I mean, we had to reach up and grab a hold of this tree to pull ourselves up out of the creek bed. And you can see this tree in the photograph that I'm talking about. And we're hiking along, we're still going, and it wasn't even right after we passed coming up out of that creek bed that he said there's something following us. I said, yeah, it's been following us for about 20 minutes. And at night, it was either 9:28 or 9:38. I can't remember which the exact time was that I took the photograph, but I remember telling him he's following us for about 20 minutes. So I turned around, I took a photo to the left, took a photo straight in the center, and I took a photo to the right. And I said, all right, let's go. He said, what was it? I said, it's probably Bigfoot. He said, are you serious? I said, yeah. He said, all right. I said, all right, let's go. So I get home, he drops me off, and I'm checking the photos. I checked the first photo, there was nothing. I checked the second photo, and I've seen it instantly. This very large pit bull looking head that's standing in the creek bed that we just came out of. And I sent it to him. He said, dude, what is that? I said, that's a dog, man. I said, you're lucky you didn't see that. I said, because if you did, you would never be hunting again. I was like, this thing was stalking us. I said, we were about to be its next meal. I said, if we hadn't had guns, we'd have been on a menu.
Dude, that's almost so just crazy. As scary as like if you did see it. If you go back and you look at photos and see this thing was that close to you and you didn't notice it, I feel like that's almost more horrifying than if you would have just spotted it in the first place. Because that just shows how close these things can get to you without you noticing.
Dude, it's crazy how close they can get. Like people don't understand and realize, you could walk right by one and not even know it. They can be so still and so quiet and not make a sound, and you wouldn't even realize it.
Dude, I'm always making this argument for Sasquatch, for Dogman, for any of this stuff. People that don't want to believe in this type of shit. Like, all the human eye catches movement. So if something isn't moving, it blends in. Like, look at all these like beautiful animals that you see at like zoos and stuff that have these bright, vibrant colors, but they're not in their natural habitats. They stick out. So you're seeing this and you're just like, that can never hide in the woods. That doesn't make any sense. But then you actually see it out hiding, like a primary one would be like a jaguar. Like, that thing is so brightly colored, but when that thing's in the woods, it's not moving. It's up in the jungle. It's like hiding on a tree branch. Like, you're not going to see that thing. Same with these like Sasquatches, man. Like Sasquatch, Dogman, these hairy things that have these like dark colored hair or like brownish colored hair. They got some moss in it. They got some dirt in it. If they're standing next to a tree, man, like you're not going to notice it. Your eye's going to scan right past it and think it's a tree.
Dude, yeah, I mean, that, like my buddy George, that was the first Bigfoot he ever seen, and I told him it was a Bigfoot, and he kept saying it was a shadow, and when he leaned out to look for me, that was when George realized it wasn't a shadow. I mean, I remember that day so vividly well. Like, I mean, it literally just happened a year ago, but like, it was just so real to have that experience, man. Like, I could hear him say, "Oh shit!" Then I just picture him running past me and being there, like, "Well, I guess we're chasing it."
Good thing you didn't chase after a dog, man. Shit. Otherwise, he would have quickly running back the other way.
No, that's not going to happen. No, I'm not FAFOing. I'm not FAFOing.
So, I mean, just out of curiosity, before we continue on with some of your experiences, when it comes to like the Dogman stuff, it seems like most people end up describing that these things are by themselves. Like, you would assume that they would have a pack mentality just because of the fact that we kind of look at them as dog-like, but I don't think they necessarily function like that, which is why I think there's this thing with Sasquatch and with Dogman. I know a lot of people have their theories thinking that like Sasquatch controls the Dogman or all these other side things, but honestly, I think it's a matter of they're all trying to basically fight for food or fight for something within the same area, and one-on-one, the Dogman knows that it can't take on the Sasquatch, but not that they typically hunt in a pack, but if two Dogmen want to get a Sasquatch out of an area, then I think that they... the enemy of my enemy is your enemy type of thing. They team up together just to get rid of that enemy, and then they might go back to, again, being territorial with each other over food and everything. But, I don't think that these Sasquatches are working with Dogman. I think it's just they push them out of the area because they are the apex predator in the area. But when it comes to a couple of these guys on a Sasquatch, like you said a little bit earlier, like I think that's when the Sasquatch runs.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think that ultimately in some areas, I think that there is conflict between the Bigfoot and the Dogman. But in some areas, like my place where I research at, there seems to be maybe like what you would call a symbiotic relationship going on. I think that's a theory I'm working on because there's Bigfoot in here, there's Dogman in here, there's feral people in here, and there's just a lot of other things. That I have no idea what they are. I mean, in July, I found 3-toed tracks. I mean, it could be turning up into straight up Jurassic Park in my place. I have no idea yet.
If there's a portal, you never know what could be coming out of that damn thing.
If it's through space time or whatever you want to call it, interdimension, anything's possible. But I think that ultimately, in my place, the Bigfoot and Dogman have a mutual respect for each other. And, they mind their own business. They have their boundaries, and I think that they respect each other on that. Now, could I be wrong? Could they be fighting each other and I don't know it? Yeah, sure. But from what I notice in my area, you really don't see any signs of fighting or anything like that. There's no broken trees. It doesn't look like a war zone or anything like that. It's just calm. The only thing that's weird about my research area is dead quiet. It's an unnatural, dead quiet feeling. When every time I hike through that place, it's unnaturally dead quiet. You'll hear the other thing they do, the Bigfoot, they'll whistle at me all the time. They always whistle. They always have this distinct whistle that they do, and they'll always do the samurai chatter. When I'm hiking up and down the trail, it sounds like there's other hikers in front of me or behind me, and there won't be nobody there. So it's Bigfoot. I think the Bigfoot and Dogman in some instances do fight, but not in all cases.
I mean, I've heard some stuff with people where I've had a couple people that have come on that'll say like I'm thinking of one person in particular, but I don't want to give up where their research area is. But they basically said there's this big ridge, and on one side is where they usually have dogman sightings, and where on the other side is usually where they have Sasquatch sightings. Like almost like there's a perimeter or like a marking that they say like you don't cross this, we won't cross this. But on the other side too, maybe some of these areas are a little bit more established than others, meaning that, if these things have existed in this area for hundreds of years, these lines are already created. But if there's a new area, if you're getting into this like portal concept, then there might be some conflict until those parameters get set. And even on the other side, if you got like a young Sasquatch or you have like a young dogman and these perimeters are already made, if one crosses over the other on some just like, trying to show their dominance type of thing, I'm sure they're going to deal with the problem and push them back to their side. But even with other animals, it's like you have these established perimeter lines, but at the same time, they will still try to see if they can extend their lines a little bit and get pushed back again.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's when push comes to shove. You try and overstep a boundaries, you're gonna mess around and find out, as they say. So I have learned that the juvenile Bigfoot, they are tricksters, man.
They got to entertain themselves.
Oh man, like you have no idea. Like they've messed with me several different times. They always throw the little tiniest things at me. They throw acorns and different stuff like that. And, they're not following straight down. They're coming from like the side and stuff. Like they're very much tricksters.
Hold that thought. We'll be right back after this brief commercial break. And we are back to the show. So let's hop right in.
So let me tell you what happened just a few last month. So December 12th, I went out and I casted a footprint. And I was out there a little later than what I wanted to be. Well, it's starting to get darker. And I'm letting this plaster set up on this footprint. And all of a sudden, I can hear two sets of bipedal footsteps walking around me. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And I can't see anything because of these mountain laurels. These bushes are so thick and they're green year round. So I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is not good. I can hear them walking around. Well, one of them sounds bigger than the other one. By the way, they were talking back and forth to each other. They were doing a samurai chatter. Now, one of them sounded bigger than the other one, just by the tone of the voice. It's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Then the little one, like they were talking back and forth to each other. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. And, I was sitting there, I'm like, this big one is chewing this little one out for leaving the footprint that I'm casting right now. Cause it was like a 14, 15 inch footprint. And I'm sitting here, I'm listening to this adult chew this little one a new butthole, and I'm just like, what the crap is happening right now, dude? I was just mesmerized by it. I was like, he's literally cussing him out. Like they kept like the big one, and then the little one like they were talking back and forth to each other, like cussing each other out. I literally think it was over that footprint that I was casting. So I ended up deciding to leave because I was like, I'm not pushing my luck with these two. So I left. I came back the next morning. The cast, they stole it. They pulled it up and stole the cast. That was the craziest thing that has ever happened to me. And I'm still at a loss of words for that.
Dude, it's a good thing you got out of there, because the question was, what were they talking about? Were they at the point where they're like, all right, you left some evidence, we're going to have to take care of this guy. So you left, and they were like, all right, let's just get rid of the cast and call it a day.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah. Cause I remembered exactly where it was at. And I got back in there. I was like, them darn things, they took it. Like, I was so mesmerized by it. I was like, that big one was definitely chewing this little one out for leaving that footprint. Because like they won't leave footprints. They really won't. Like, if they don't want you to see their footprint, they won't. And I think it's ultimately a technique that they use. And it's like, they're letting the other ones know, hey, I went in this direction, just follow my track this way.
See, I'm kind of curious how these things might potentially be able to hide their footprints. Like, if you're looking at it from like a woo-woo perspective or a spiritual perspective, like you can obviously come up with 100 different theories for that. But if you're trying to think about it as, these things might be more on the physical side and still kind of carry some spiritual tendencies with them.
Capabilities.
Yeah, like it makes you wonder how they might be able to hide their footprints. Is it a matter of like they know not to step in certain spots that are a little bit softer? Do they walk with their feet a particular way? Because I know they got the mid-tarsal break, and for anybody that's not familiar with what that is, it's basically Ryley, where like apes can basically bend their foot, where humans can't do that because we have the flat foot. So if these things are able to do that, do they have the ability to possibly like, almost like concave their foot where they're walking on their toe and their heel, so you're not catching these viable footprints? They just almost look like, I don't know, just like markings or something in the dirt at certain points. Like,
that's an interesting concept. Yeah, that's really interesting.
Because I mean, people kind of do that when you're walking through like a mucky area. Like you'll walk more on your toes, or you'll walk more on your heels. I wonder if they can bend their foot, if they can almost do both at the same time and not leave that solid middle of the foot footprint.
I'm sure they could. I'm sure they could. Or ultimately they just carry a branch around with them and they just wipe the leaves over their track. I mean, it's an interesting thing for sure. Or whether they, portal jump. I'm sure that the portals are on a different spectrum that we can't see, and they see where they're at. And all they have to do is just hop in it, and that's the least of their worries.
I mean, even on another side, if these things are ape too, I mean, it makes you wonder if if there's a certain area where they know that the ground's a little bit softer, you'll see a couple footprints and then they'll stop. I mean, could these things potentially be, monkeying through the trees for certain spots, or they know that there's some soft soil? Yeah. I mean,
I'm sure they know how to climb trees anyway, regardless if they're apes or not. I'm sure they can climb a tree all day long.
I mean, I feel like that's something people don't think about a lot when it comes to Sasquatch. Is we talk about how primate-like these things are, but you really don't hear many people making assumptions of these things being in trees or climbing in trees. Like, I know there's some people that have had some like sightings where they'll be sitting up on a branch or something, but I don't feel like it's talked about too much. That these things could potentially be using the trees just like any other primate would. Well,
Dogman's the same way. Dogman can climb trees. Did you know that?
Dude, that'd be a horrifying thing to see climbing a tree. If it's got the like raccoon style hands with the giant claws, these things can probably just straight up scale a tree like a bear would.
Yeah, they can. They can climb trees. Yeah, I've found claw marks. Yeah,
dude, that means at that point there's like no safety because you don't know if you can put a shot in these things. You can't go up in a tree. Like, you can't turn and run.
Ultimately, I think the only way if you can physically harm a live one is the head. Because I'll tell you a story. I don't know if you're familiar with this or not, but Daniel Boone actually unalived one.
I've heard this story, but if you want for the listeners, if you want to kind of recap on it a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So Daniel Boone was out with his son. They were out hunting, and they split up. And next thing Daniel knows, he hears his son screaming, and he goes to where his son is, and there's this Bigfoot that's body slamming him. He sees it body slam him once, and it body slams him the second time. But as it goes to do it the third time, he aims and he shoots it and he kills it. He shot it in the head, and they get up to it, and they're checking everything out, and they go to do an autopsy on this thing, and its chest is just nothing but solid bones. So even if he shot it in the chest, it wouldn't have done anything to it. So I think ultimately the only way that you can physically harm these things and unalive them is just shoot them in the head.
I wonder if it's a certain spot too, because I wonder if they have like thicker skulls where like you wouldn't necessarily be able to maybe shoot them in like the forehead because it might be a little bit thicker there. Like I wonder if it's like certain spots within the head. It's just like there's softer spots you might actually be able to make it through. Because if these things got that concave cone-shaped head, I assume that the top of their skull is probably pretty hard.
Yeah, I would imagine it is. Yeah. So I mean, anywhere that's probably got soft tissue around the bones, somewhere like around the eyes, maybe. I'd say that's an easy place. But I mean, let's just face it. Nobody's going to have that much time, to aim and make sure the shot's perfect. I mean, you just gotta, hope and pray that you have the good shot that you need.
I mean, I had Eli Watson on not too long ago. He was on Bizarre Encounters, and he was talking about this encounter story that I don't remember exactly when it was from, but it was some hunter who claimed to have shot 2 juvenile ones of these things. And I don't remember exactly where he said he had shot, but the whole thing, and I think Eli's doing a documentary on this for Small Town Monsters, but yeah, supposedly this guy shot 2 juveniles, but considering that they were juveniles, juvenile, there might be still some points where like the head is still softer than like an adult would be, because if you're looking at a 6-foot juvenile, I mean, we're thinking of like a 6-foot adult, but a 6-foot juvenile might only be a couple years old, and it takes a year and a half, whatever it is, for like a human baby's skull to harden up to the point where, and it still has a little bit of time after that to fully thicken. So I wonder if it's a matter of like even juveniles, you might have a little bit better luck because their skull is softer. But when you start getting to these adults and they're like established thick skulls, it's like certain spots. You have to like really hope that you hit that right spot while you're trying to aim all this thing's bluff charging you.
Yeah, exactly right. Yes, 100%. Yeah, you hit that right on the head. And so here's a story that just recently came to me. There was a guide somewhere out west. I'm not sure what state it was in, but there was a guide that took somebody out elk hunting, and they were out and they were setting up on this bull elk to shoot. I can't remember how far away they were from it, but the hunter that's about to shoot the elk notices movement over to the left, and he moves the scope over in that direction, and he sees it's a Bigfoot. And the guide's telling him, don't shoot, don't shoot, don't shoot, don't shoot, don't shoot. And he's like, why? He's just like, don't shoot, don't shoot, don't shoot. Well, what's the hunter do? Shoots it and drops it. He's like, well, the guide's like, well, you screwed up. We need to run now. He's like, why? He said, just run now. And the guide turns around. He starts running. He leaves the hunter. And the hunter's like, well, okay. And the hunter starts just running right behind the guide. And the guide's running. And he turns around and he looks. The big one that the guy called the alpha is just behind the hunter. And he said that the alpha caught up to the hunter and ripped his head clean off and just ripped him to shreds. Well, the guide goes to the sheriff's office. The sheriff's office comes out, and he told them word for word what happened. And the sheriff's office said this was a bear.
You saw nothing.
Yeah, exactly right. Yes. And there's so much, man, all these unknown animal attacks, like, just burned me up so much. Like, it's insane, man. Like, why do you just want to cover up the truth? You know, just blame it on a bunch of dogs, or, wild dogs or anything like that. It's just, it makes no sense. Like, there's an incident that happened here in where I live, Jimtown Road and Carnation Way, and there's a lot of debate on this, and people still say it's dogs. Well, I've done my research on it, and let's just say that the autopsies and stuff are saying otherwise. Autopsy says unknown canine. So there was 2 people that were killed. The first one was killed in April, and then the second one was was it April or March? I have the notes written down on my notes, but I know the Tony Aarons and Amber Miller. They were the 2 victims. They were killed on the same stretch of road, but they were viciously torn apart. But Tony Aarons, he got off pretty easy because he was killed by the thing instantly. He was torn apart, head ripped off, and all kinds of other stuff. But Amber, she was still alive, and they took her to the hospital. They tried to save her, but a few days after being in the hospital, she died. But these things don't play around. Dogmen are extremely aggressive. They don't play around. You're lucky. I always tell people, you would much rather want to run into a Bigfoot than a dog man. If you can't, not all Bigfoot are good. I will just say that, they're like people. There's good and bad people, and there's good and bad Bigfoot. Is there good and bad dog man? Maybe not. I tend to lean more towards not, but they are in their home. You have to respect them in their home, and you have to, somewhat acknowledge them and to respect them in that home. I always tell people, there's unintended consequences of being in the woods around Bigfoot. I never had anything paranormal happen in this house until I started researching Bigfoot. When I started researching Bigfoot and started having stuff just progressively over time, stuff falling in the house, just cold chills all of a sudden, seeing shadows moving throughout the house. But then what started was the Bigfoot would actually show up to the house. They would take the spare tire off the trash can, put it on the back porch. Every time I'd open the back porch to go outside, that spare tire would hit the door. And so I'd have to move the spare tire back. And then after I would get done grilling, they would open my grill lid, and I'd have to come back out and close my grill. Well, I started eventually just keeping the porch light on. And there was one night we had one smack the kitchen window. And then just last week, we had one smack the side of our shed behind the house. And my wife said, "What was that?" She said, "Was that a raccoon?" I said, "No." Then it done it again. I said, "Do you really think that's a raccoon?" She said, "Is that a Bigfoot?" I said, "Uh-huh." I said, "Just go to sleep. Don't pay it no mind." And, she didn't really believe in the Bigfoot, until I casted a footprint and I brought the footprint home. And it was in May or June, if I'm not mistaken. I took her for a hike in a new place that I had never been to before. We were being escorted out by one. And I guess we weren't going fast enough for it. And it threw a rock behind us. And she started freaking out, and she took off running, and she ended up breaking her ankle. And that was the longest hike out of a mountain that I have ever had. So, and then it started thunderstorming on us. So that was just a really crazy day.
I mean, that just shows the difference between these things, though, is that it seems like with Sasquatch, their first instinct is to try to scare you out because they don't want to draw more attention to themselves by, having a body or, having somebody go missing in the area, where dogmen, they don't seem to think like that. They think a lot more primal, where they're like, if somebody's in their territory, they're just going to rip them up to shreds to the point where they're unrecognizable. And kind of continuing off of what you said a little bit earlier about the whole, like, oh, it was a bear with that one person that had that encounter. Yeah. I've had a few people who work for DNR on the show, and they'll say things like, not that it's some grand cover up, but whenever anybody reports seeing a Sasquatch in an area, they tell us just to put up a sign saying that there was a bear sighting in the area and tell people that they can't go over and camp or hike in that specific area. But I don't know if it's necessarily like a giant government cover up, or if it's maybe just a matter of, well, one, I'm sure that there is some interest that's invested into the government, whether they're researching or creating some of these things. But at least from DNR's perspective, I think it's one of those things that it's like they've all had weird experiences. Most people that I've talked to who work for DNR, who work in these particular areas, have all brought up having these encounters, and they seem to be believers. But I think it's one of those things that you can't just have one section of the government that's acknowledging this stuff. So it's like, it's an unspoken thing that they all, for the most part, seem to agree that these things exist. But, they're not going to be that one government agency that already comes out and outs this stuff. And on the other side, I think it's also a matter of like, they're supposed to be protecting these parks. I don't think they want to like scare people away from these parks. So it's a matter of
they got too much money. They have too much money coming in. It's a money racket. It's exactly the thing. They could talk about UFOs, UAPs all day long. That's stuff in the sky. You start talking about stuff on the ground, people ain't going to come out of their houses.
Dude, Michigan, you wouldn't believe how many crazy dogman stories I found that have been completely covered up. Like one prime one I was digging into when I was doing a lot of the Michigan dogman research was this weird OnStar call that came from Troy, Michigan. And it was literally like an OnStar call. It sounded like people getting basically ripped apart by like a dogman on the other side of this. And a lot of people have said it sounds kind of staged. But on the other side, my argument is usually that OnStar, they have a script that they got to run through. The other side doesn't. That's the side that makes you uncomfortable to listen to. But the OnStar side is like they do have a particular script that they have to go through. But the weird part was every single time I'd find that on the internet, it would disappear. I had to get to a point where I recorded it myself and I have it on my hard drive because it would just disappear all the time. But on the other side, they ended up doing a year later this like joke werewolf attack for like an OnStar Halloween thing. So it seemed like it was like this layer of a cover up where if somebody finds that, they're going to associate it with this.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's crazy, man. Like, yeah, that's like red flag.
Yep. And then there was even another spot that there's this campground in Michigan where like people were reporting all of these like encounters and stuff like that. And it got to a point where they like shut down the camp and basically said that it was some like ridiculous excuse. They said like the land or something like wasn't safe. Like it could end up creating like slides on like the side of like the ground or something that.
I'll do you one better. So this time last year, I was able to access the area where I seen the dog man. That area was paved in the summer of last year. They've got road signs up right now in that area. It says the road's closed for road work when it literally has brand new asphalt on it. And that's the same place where I seen the dog man this time last year. And I'm just sitting here like, dude, what's the odds of this? Like, they know that I know that their asset is running around up here on this mountain. Like, I seen it, and it's just so funny. I'm like, man, whatever.
It almost makes you wonder though, if like, one, there seems to be this cover up with stuff. Like, they still let people into these areas sometimes, and then on the other side they block them off. But it makes you wonder, one, if they will almost like purposely let certain people wander into that area because they know that these things need to eat. And if they kind of push stuff into the area, then they won't come past. Or on the other side, if it is something that's a little bit more government related, you got to have some test subjects. So maybe they will purposely let some people wander into these areas knowing that they're going to disappear and they're just going to clean it up. And that's just going to be another missing 411,
Exactly right, man. And it's pathetic ultimately, and it's just really shady. It is, if we have government hybrid weapons, just tell us, just tell the people, let the general public be aware. You have these hybrid monsters running around in our national parks, and if we're using them in war, just let us know. I mean, just do whatever you got to do.
Hold that thought. We'll be right back. And we are back. So let's get back to it. I mean, my argument for that the reason why they would never be able to do that is because the intention for these things, if they are trying to create these things or to figure out how to harness these things and like use them, if they are taking the natural ones and almost trying to figure out how to like make them obedient, they can never tell the general public because they'd be using these things for like secret operations. Like, you drop two of these things into a base, they destroy the entire base, and anybody that makes it out alive starts telling these stories, nobody's going to believe them. But if you start telling the general public, people are going to be aware of this type of shit, and then you won't be able to sit here and pretend like you had no idea what happened. Like, the whole intention for these things would be just to drop them in and be like, that's crazy. Like, what are you talking about? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, exactly right. Yeah. Oh, they just fell from the sky. Oh, no idea. Well, there was
one guy makes it out and they start talking about getting attacked by a Sasquatch or like a dog man. It's like, nobody's going to believe that person, and the government has no tie to that thing,
Yeah, exactly right. And there was an instance somewhere. I'm not sure where the helicopter crashed, but there was an Army helicopter that crashed somewhere. I'm not sure when this happened. It was either North Carolina or South Carolina, but there was a helicopter that crashed, and they said what came off of the helicopter crash was these dog-headed men.
Dude, speaking of that one,
crazy stuff.
Have you heard of any of the stories that people have reported about seeing these things in like bulletproof jackets and shit? Like, I had Nick Orton on from Tales from the Grid Square, and I think he was the one that brought up some of these stories about it. They were coming straight from soldiers saying that, they'd be sitting there at night doing scouting and just watching off into the distance, and they would see these like dog-headed like people that would look like they were wearing like bulletproof vests and shit. And if that is the case, that these stories are coming straight from like soldiers, like maybe there's other governments involved in this stuff. Or on the other side, that just proves that there is some type of government presence with this stuff. Because why other reason would these things be wearing anything that's even slightly resembling a bulletproof vest?
Exactly right. Yeah, if they're just a natural creature, why would they have that on? You know what I mean? It's just crazy, man. Like, people have to cover this stuff up and just keep people lying in the dark, man. It's pathetic. But I'm just a small town boy from East Tennessee out here running the woods looking for Bigfoot and Dogman, just trying to answer the questions that I've had for going on 5 years now. So
dude, it seems to be one of those things that it's like a lot of the old researchers are very like flesh and blood, but all the new researchers are like taking into consideration that there's more to this reality than what we think. Like, just astrophysics in general like proves the possibility of there being portals. So like most people that are like old school Sasquatch researchers,
NASA even acknowledges that portals exist, and then you have CERN,
creating them.
Very well known. Yeah, exactly right. Yes, playing God, pretty much. Yeah, exactly. Opening portals. I will say this. I don't know how much truth there is to this or not. This is just for entertainment purposes only. There is Oak Ridge Nuclear Laboratory right here in Tennessee.
I was just about to bring this up.
CERN is in deep at Oak Ridge National Laboratory. Apparently, they have opened a portal that they can't get closed, and they're shooting all these dog-headed men creatures that are coming out of this portal. They have people set up with 50 caliber snipers shooting whatever comes out for entertainment purposes only.
I mean, even more so going into for entertainment purposes only, if you actually dive into this place, their goal and intention, as they said from the beginning, was that they were trying to open up a rift into another dimension. They never even said that they were trying to, discover the God particle or anything like CERN was saying. Like, these people straight up were saying that they were trying to see if it's possible to open up other realities. Like, they didn't even try to hide it on this one.
No, man. I mean, there's Bigfoot in Oak Ridge and everything, man. Like, there's a lot of paranormal stuff in Oak Ridge. Bigfoot, Dogman. There's all kinds of crazy stuff. So,
I mean, that would make sense where the big upspike in Dogman in Tennessee came from, because it seems like Tennessee is like the prime location for Dogman sightings, and it seems like the Manistee is too, but the Manistee seems to be more of the like government tied ones, where again people will get the random calls.
They call it the Dogman Triangle. You have Tennessee, Kentucky, Michigan, all that, like all in a big triangle of where all the Dogman stuff happens. So, there's no such thing as a coincidence.
Yeah, there's definitely something a lot deeper to this shit.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Oh man, I can keep doing this all day long. I definitely feel like we can do a part 2. Absolutely. We can keep going, brother.
Well, I guess before we start wrapping up, we at least have to dive into this one at least a little bit, because I'm sure that you kind of brought it up a little bit in the beginning of the show. I know a lot of people have related this stuff with more of like the biblical view on stuff. And considering that, you mentioned that you prayed before you went in this particular time, like where do you sit as far as the whole biblical connection with these dogmen and Sasquatch and the whole Nephilim connection comes in?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the dogmen are essentially hellhounds. And I didn't really buy much into that, until the day that I had that experience with the one that I prayed, and sure enough, I think that prayer protected me from that thing. It gave me a sphere of protection. The dogmen I think they are interdimensional beings. And I always tell people this: if you stay on the sidewalk, they're on their chains. They can't get you as long as you don't go off the sidewalk. And that's essentially, like the main hiking trails or whatever you want to call it. You stay on the path. You don't wander off the path. As soon as you wander off the path, you're in the leash of their chains. They can get you once you wander off the path. But as long as you stay on the path, they won't be able to bother you. And there was a story that stuck out to me. There was 2 guys out hiking, or they were hiking or hunting, and they were about to be attacked by this dog man. And there was what they said was an angel came down and pulled out a huge sword and cut off the dog man's head. And they were asking this guy who he was, and he said that he was an angel. And they were asking him what the creature was, and he's like, "Well, we call them hellhounds, but you call them dog man." So that was a pretty crazy story. So I tend to think that they are hellhounds or some kind of Nephilim hybrid creature. Then the Bigfoot, I think there's different types of the Bigfoot. I think some of them are more flesh and blood. I think some of them are flesh and blood with supernatural abilities, and then I think some of them have more supernatural abilities than flesh and blood. I think that the ones that are flesh and blood are descendants of Cain. Cain was cursed to be a restless wanderer of the earth. So I think some of the Bigfoot stuff is flesh and blood, natural from the line of Cain. Esau is another one. Esau was born covered with red hair, and Esau is known to have been associated with the Nephilim giants, and his bloodline came down. So Esau's bloodline with the Nephilim could transpire down to what we have today as Bigfoot in some instances. And then you just have the straight up Nephilim, which is the Bigfoot are descendants of those. Now, the Nephilim were true giants. So they're talking like 50, 100 feet tall, or however you want to call it. But I think that over time, they have adapted to become smaller to remain more hidden over time. If you can even go into the Sasquatch Genome Project, which there is a lot of debate about that, but I truly believe and find it to be legit, just because it goes against everything that most people don't want to accept or believe in, and I just think that that's somehow truthful, because it says that the mitochondrial DNA of a Bigfoot is a human mother from the Middle East, and the nuclear DNA of a Bigfoot is something completely unknown to science. Well, if you ask me, I think that's fallen angels. I think technology from back then was created by the fallen angels. And I think that today, even, I think the fallen angels are in cahoots with the government. And that's how we're getting all this technology that we have. And I think that with their help is how we get these hybridized beings, because that's how they done it in the days of Noah. The Nephilim were hybrids. The fallen angels did not just procreate with human women; they procreated with animals and even plants. So there was a lot of hybridization going on there. So it's definitely a rabbit hole to go down. But I was not close with God until I started reading into the scripture and digging into the Nephilim and all this stuff. And I love the theories of Cain, Esau, and the Nephilim.
I mean, I could definitely stand behind that. That's kind of where I end up falling for a lot of this stuff. And the Hellhounds thing, one thing that I was kind of thinking about with that is, so you take the Nephilim concept and then you take the Hellhound concept that like most people would assume, like where it was more like how Jack Johnson would like describe it, like these literal like black hounds. So it seems like there's this transition where maybe there was a point where there was some more hybridization happening, where you were taking these Nephilim again, and then they were breeding with these Hellhounds, and they created this almost like a Hellhound 2.0. And then maybe that's potentially what we're dealing with, and that's why there's these like old variation of Hellhounds and these like new variation of Hellhounds. And kind of continuing in with what you were saying with like the Sasquatch thing, I mean, I've definitely taken into consideration the whole idea with like fallen angels when it comes to these things and hybridizing, mating with the sons of men, all that kind of stuff, or with the women of men. But then when you get into Sasquatch, you always have these things like you were talking about before we started the show, that they seem to really be drawn to females of like human females. So if you have the Nephilim blood and a human female, and then it continues down the line where rather than keeping that Nephilim blood strong, you start continuously breeding with these human females, particularly like the natives, which is why a lot of these like Sasquatch seem to have these native features. It makes you wonder if maybe that's why you have the split where there's these more spiritual ones versus these more physical ones, is maybe the physical ones have bred so much of the Nephilim bloodline out of them that they still hold some of it, but they're more human than they are Nephilim.
Exactly. It's very small. It's very small percentage of the Nephilim bloodline in them. Absolutely.
And then on the other side, these ones that you deal with that are like very like physical, they disappear, all this, maybe they kept the bloodline a little bit stronger where they're breeding between each other more rather than having that split where they were constantly mating with the human females.
I mean, you got to think about it too. They travel, there's probably interbreeding between the different clans of them, and I'm sure they have their own routines or whatever you want to call it, however they want to do that. It's definitely a rabbit hole to go down with the Nephilim bloodlines, but I definitely think that the Nephilim blood is still living on through these things. And as it says, there's going to be a second days of Noah. I can't remember the exact name of the verse, but it says that there will be second days of Noah, and the beast and the beasts of the earth shall be unleashed. And so here's what I've been thinking. So how they're trying to make all these smart cities, and they're trying to force everybody into the smart cities. I think they're going to unleash all of these beasts onto the earth, and they're going to force everybody into moving to these smart cities.
I mean, I've definitely considered that it's almost like they make you feel like there's safety like within these walls. But even within the smart city, that's where starts getting really weird, because I dive into the whole like demons in the system concept quite frequently, that the whole internet age stuff, it isn't something that we're...
AI is demonic. AI is demonic stuff. I don't care what anybody says. AI is demons. I mean, UFOs, UAPs, that's demonic crafts. And Greys, they're just demons with a host.
Dude, almost every type of AI that I've used, I've gotten it to a point where they'll say that AI stands for Layzell intelligence, which again gets really, really weird with that shit. But I think that we're tapping into something that has already always been here. And we think that we're creating it, but we're not. We're actually tapping back into something. So if you're thinking about the idea about letting all of these creatures out and keeping everybody in the smart cities, you know, that's like a perfect access point for these other disembodied beings to be able to inhabit people. And I've talked about this on a couple shows recently about...
you have the Nephilim spirits. You have the Nephilim spirits that still haunt this earth.
And they need
Not
a
just
vessel.
the Nephilim blood. Exactly right.
They need a physical vessel. So if you start getting people to go into these like augmented realities, you know, who knows if you ever come back? You know, you could be going into this thing, leaving an empty vessel on the outside, thinking that you're coming back to your vessel, but you're not. You're actually still within another layer of this virtual reality. And then these disembodied beings can basically exist within these Sodom and Gomorrah smart cities, and everybody else souls and consciousness is just trapped within this other layer of reality. You know, like it sounds really crazy and out there, but you start diving into stuff and you start connecting all these weird dots, man, and it really makes more sense than it doesn't.
It's no such thing as a coincidence, man. I'm telling you.
Why is the most hated people in politics in normal society lately? It seems to be like the Christians, because they're out here and they're talking about these viewpoints, and it seems like these viewpoints are trying to be suppressed. Like for years and years, dude. Like the common trope was Christian is totally okay. Why is it the past 20 years anything that's Christian related, push it off to the side? No Christians, bad Christians.
I'll tell you what's going to happen. All this UFO, UAP stuff, it's coming out for a reason. You know, I think that when the rapture happens, they're going to blame all this on the UFOs and the aliens and all this stuff. When it's actually the rapture. That's going to be the great deception.
I mean, theoretically, though, this is something I've kind of contemplated too. If you were inside of a system, would you ever be able to go to heaven or go to hell potentially in the first place? So if you got people within this smart city virtual reality, would the rapture, would you almost in a weird way be able to almost stop the rapture, because there wouldn't be any souls that would be in this physical reality? They would be stuck in this virtual reality. Because that's always the way to trick people, man. You tell people they can be with their relatives forever, and they go into the system, but after you become part of the system, you get your consciousness copy transferred. You're now within this. Like, I don't think that you would have access to be able to go to heaven anymore at that point.
That's right. Yeah, you're hitting something now. That is a interesting. Yeah. That's crazy, man. I didn't even think about that. Yeah, because like you would totally be going against God and stuff like that. Dude, that's crazy.
And then essentially you could, it's the typical thing with like demons or disembodied beings, fallen angels, you know, they deceive people into thinking that they're going to be able to be with their relatives forever, not realizing that, again, you're completely blocking them off from going on and existing in any other spiritual realm, the true path.
Yeah, exactly right, dude. That is wild. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense now. Yeah.
Hey, and maybe that's why they keep the Sasquatch so hidden, is because if they are potentially a link to this Nephilim bloodline, maybe they know that there needs to be something where they use their DNA for something. So it's like they keep them quiet because they need that Nephilim in the physical reality in order to make some of this stuff work. You know, like maybe it's a matter of they need them around because they are a physical tie from the Nephilim into the physical realm.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I mean that's crazy, man. That's a rabbit hole. That is a rabbit hole, 100%. You know, and I'll stick by it, man. I think there is, like I said, there's some that are flesh and blood. I think that it's just wore down over time, and then I think some of them are flesh and blood and interdimensional, and I think some of them have more interdimensional capabilities than what the other ones do. I think that's just it's a rabbit hole, but you know, the Bible. There's a lot of truthful stuff in the Bible, and you know, it's all the answers are in there.
And I mean, you really start seeing that when you start diving into other cultures and you start realizing that all these stories actually link up. Like, I'm still convinced that the entire like Hindu religion, all of the different like you know, the Nordic religions, all of these things were actually the fallen angels just going by different names for different cultures.
Oh yeah.
And then you get into like the Epic of Gilgamesh, and it talks about the flood. Like, all these things are connected. People don't want to say that there's any truth or validity to the Bible, but then why is it that all of these ancient cultures have these same archetypes, these same stories, these same everything happening? It's just different perspectives of the same events.
Exactly right. Exactly right. You know, and I think all the Greek gods, you know, like Zeus and all them, I think ultimately that those were Nephilim. I think they were Nephilim. Zeus and Hades and all them, I think they were Nephilim.
And then the stories that they were telling about the Titans and all this type of stuff, I almost feel like it's their version of manipulating the story of like the angels and like God and all this type of stuff to make themselves seem like the good guys.
Exactly right. Yep.
Because they all start off with this destruction before rebuilding society in the good way. And even when you get into like Hindu religion, it's like they destroy everything to rebuild, which seems ironically just like the Nephilim concept.
Oh yeah, because the flood was to kill them all out, but it didn't. I mean, it killed them, not all of them.
Hey, but
the bloodline still lives on.
Dude, it's just like pest snails in an aquarium. I don't know if there's any other aquarium people out there, but, you know, all it takes is just one in there, and the next thing you know, you'll have thousands of them. They'll start to respread again. Like, you got to wipe them out completely as a whole, because if one makes it, they'll all come back.
Oh, my gosh.
Stay tuned, guys. This is our last break. But if you enjoyed the show and think I deserve it, please leave a review or rating for the show on iTunes, Spotify, or any other podcatcher you use. Your continued support is what makes this show possible, and your opinions go a long way to help the show grow and improve. So thank you. Now feel free to skip past these ads so we can get back to the show. Now back with that deep conversation you crave. But I guess we kind of opened up a can of worms that we could definitely start up going into episode 2 with once we set that one up.
Dude, absolutely, yes. Yes, we have to do an episode 2, man. I love it. I love talking about the Bible and Bigfoot and all this stuff. I love it.
Well, now that we set the groundwork, man, we'll hop right in next time talking about all the off-the-wall biblical theories and everything that connects into this stuff, man. And hopefully by then you might even have some more experiences you can share on the show, man.
Oh, yeah, man. I mean, I had some that I didn't even cover, you know, because we got off the deep end, and, you know, we'll have to catch up on that next time.
Oh, yeah, 100%. But before we start wrapping up completely, man, I always like doing words of wisdom from the guest to the listener. So if there's any words of wisdom you might want to bestow on the listeners today, man, what might it be?
I would encourage you to stay prayed up. You know, whether you do it or not, that's on you. But I encourage each and every day to stay prayed up. You know, because that's just how I am. You know, I'm a people person. I love everybody, and I just encourage everybody to stay prayed up. And safety is not to be taken for granted when out hiking. You know, could be a wildlife management area, could be a national forest. You know, wherever. Could be just walking past an old abandoned building in a stretch of woods, you know. Just keep your head on a swivel, you know, and if you hear something, just don't pay it no mind. Just be safe. That's the biggest thing that I can grant you. Just be safe, keep your head on a swivel, and stay prayed up. Stay safe in the physical and in the spiritual, of course. Yep, exactly right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 100%. And, you know, there is things other than Bigfoot and Dogman out there, and I'm sure me and Shayn will dive into that on the next one. And who knows, man, maybe within the next 10, 15 years, there might even be some more stuff that starts popping up, man. Oh my gosh, man. Yeah, it's untelling. But nothing's going to surprise me anymore. That's where I've gotten, man, because we're starting to get to this point where, like, magic is starting to turn into science, man. Like, well, you know, I mean, we're going to have woolly mammoths walking the earth again in like 4 or 5 more years. So, yeah. Dude, that sounds... I see those studies, man, and I just imagine one day just being in my backyard, you know, not even being in my backyard, just, you know, having my morning cup of coffee, opening up the back window, and then off in the distance, I just see a fucking mammoth. Like, okay. Exactly. Yeah. There's a mammoth in the neighborhood again. I mean, yeah, you'll be close to Canada. I mean, I think they're turning a bunch of them loose in Canada. I think. I mean, there's enough area in northern Michigan they could definitely do it too. I mean, I mean, they're planning on bringing a bunch of things back. That colossal biosciences. They're bringing back the mammoth, the thylacine, and the dodo, and all kinds of other stuff apparently. So as long as they don't start bringing back dinosaurs, I think we'll be all right. Yeah, we all learn how that goes at Jurassic Park. You gotta bring in other genetics to stabilize them. They made 6 movies on why that's a bad idea. And yet they still never learn throughout the movies either. Exactly right. And they keep making more. They're like, all right, let's mix another dangerous genetic in with this thing to stabilize it, and maybe it'll help. It won't adapt or nothing. Yeah, it can't camouflage. Yeah. What's the worst that could happen?
And shit, man.
Oh.
If anybody wanted to come and find any of your research, come and find you on the internet, possibly even share some Sasquatch encounters, Dogman encounters with you, where can people come and find you on the internet, man? And where can people share their experiences?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Bigfoot reports and data. I'm on all platforms. I'm on X too, even. Bigfoot reports and data. Or you can look me up, Harley Owens. You can reach out to me over Messenger and share your experience or encounter. Or if you want to, you can share it in my Facebook group. It's a very safe group. You feel free to welcome and share your experiences in there. It's because I learned real quick, because I was very much ridiculed after my first experience. I learned that nobody should have to go through that, much less from your family or friends. And I don't wish that on anybody. So, like I said, Bigfoot reports and data, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, X, all social media platforms. It's very easy to find. So if you can't find me on one, all you have to do is find the links in the bio of whatever social media you find me on and just go through there.
And I, of course, will put those down in the show notes so everybody can find them quick and easy. And, man, I appreciate you coming on the show today, and I'm really, really looking forward for round 2.
Oh, round 2 is going to be a blast, Shane, and I'm looking forward to it, brother.
Hopefully sooner rather than later. We'll make sure that we set something up.
Yes, exactly. We will have this worked out. And like I said, this year's just been so crazy. And my wife having surgery on January 2nd, so she's a month post-op, and everything's just been so crazy. And we'll make it happen. We'll make it happen, brother.
If you enjoyed today's conversation and want to show some love, smash that follow icon and share today's episode with a friend. Grassroots support from listeners like you is exactly how this show grows. So thank you guys for all the support. And if anybody would like to get in touch with me for any reason whatsoever, you guys can do so through email, which is inquiriesofourrealitypodcast@outlook.com, or through social media. Instagram and Facebook are the ones that I'm the most active on. Or you guys can also contact me through the submission form, which is available at the top of the link tree, which is available down in the show description. It's the contact me bar, and that will go directly to my email, of course. And the last way you guys can get a hold of me is through the hotline. You can either text or call, whatever's easier for you guys. And that number is 313-364-1551. And if you guys have some free time, don't forget to check out some of the awesome friends that we have in the community. IKNOWSQUATCH, Snarly Out Natural Products, Cryptoteeology, and Big Ape Threads, and our other friends with affiliate links, Dimension Devices, Oregon-ite, and Sticker Mule, with additional discounts and credits available, and more information for those is available down in the show notes. And every single thing that I mentioned throughout the show is all available in the link tree, which is available down in that show description also. And with that, I hope you guys enjoyed the conversation. Hope today's show has connected some dots in your own reality. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. Have a good night, everybody.
Reality isn't what it seems. Abductees taking aboard a craft with a tractor beam. Is life a simulation or an astral dream? Aliens travel through black holes in different galaxies. Life is a bizarre odyssey, with a mic talking about philosophy. Well, Bigfoot is stalking campers as a Wendigo walks through the woods of sharpened antlers, using a Ouija board to talk to the dead like a necromancer. There's so many questions and not enough answers. So if you're interested in mysteries and abnormalities, tune in and listen to Inquiries of Our Reality. So if you're interested in mysteries and abnormalities,